Hey guys, welcome to episode 10
Yes.
of
Dope Synergies
Dope
Dope Synergies
Synergies
podcast.
podcast.
Thank you very much.
What's
your name?
My name is
This is
Alex.
the famous Alex that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But welcome to another episode from our lovely bed.
Mm-hmm.
We decided to get creative here. I am Gladia,
And Steph.
and we are Dope Synergies. Today, we took a 1 week break because we want to be intentional with the conversations, and we don't want to just kind of be robotic where it's like we have to. It's just like whatever comes to us. And actually, throughout this past week, the topic that we're going to talk about today kind of came to us through like the many conversations that we have surrounding boredom, specifically in relationships and what that means, and how maybe our past, how we've dealt with it in our past relationships, how other people view what is considered boring in the relationships. And yeah, is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say when we're talking about boring, right, it's not necessarily that it's boring, but that's what we're trying to say it in a way where it's relatable to people. So when I say boring, we're talking about the routine, the day to day, the same routine that you have with your significant other and in your life too. I think this goes for not just the relationship with your partner, but with yourself and in your life. And the video I was listening to earlier talking about quantum timing and how to manipulate time.
Right.
And sometimes we think that we're bored because we don't see,
The
progress, or
results.
every single day is not spontaneous. Like you just have certain highlights of spontaneous trips, throughout your life, but you don't think of every day as, that sort of spontaneous.
Or
aspect to it.
I'll even add toxic
Mhm.
too. I mean,
Yeah, that's on the other side of
especially
the spectrum,
right.
right? Like if it's too boring, a lot of
Well,
us, I was there too,
you're
right?
raised in like a toxic environment.
My parents were
Right.
constantly always arguing and violent to each other, physically, verbally, putting each other down. But it was like their way to show love in this weird, toxic way because they didn't know any better. They didn't know how to communicate, and a lot of
Share
what we
their
talked about
feelings
in
and
the other episodes.
insecurities.
Yeah, none of that. So the way to shout it out is through anger, through resentment, but they would never leave each other. And so I think culturally, a lot of people do that. And in a weird way, I caught myself doing the same thing in my last marriage where if we didn't argue, it was like, well, you don't care, or things are going too well. That means that they have someone else and they're too busy with that other person. That's why we're not arguing over here, which is like the dumbest logic, but I know that it happens, right? Because we've both been on that.
Right. And so what we're going to delve into maybe our past experiences that kind of led us, because we've both been married as well, and how we've navigated in our current relationship together through just being open with each other, transparent, and how powerful that is, and how there's something beautiful with, and I don't even call it boring. It's
Mhm.
just life, right? And it's appreciating those moments, those slow moments, because at any point, I think we've had this conversation, at any moment that can be altered, shifted. We may receive the worst news, right? Something may happen. And I think we had the conversation yesterday talking about accepting that changes can happen, and that can be a changes between us where it's like, hey, we reach a crossroads that maybe it doesn't make sense to be together, and being okay with that.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow, but hey, who knows, in 3 years will we still like each other? Who knows? I would love that.
But we don't know.
But we don't know. So it's just having those open conversations that people aren't willing to have, first off with themselves, let alone with their partner.
Yeah. And I think just to give them an example of what we mean, it's like every day you have your own routine, right? For me and for her, it's very similar in that we wake up, the first thing we attend to is ourselves first, which means she'll get, she'll do her work and then does physical activities, and then comes back and does more work. And I do the same thing. And in between, I'm also living the mom life. You guys saw Alex. So we're all co-living, working from home, and homeschooling all in one. And so we've sort of created this structure, this ideal structure of what we want our day to day to look like. And sometimes it gets very boring, right? Where you're just like, oh, it's like the same thing again. And you try to switch it up, and then we change our schedules. And I think it took me, I don't know, what was it, like 2 weeks ago that I thought about it, and I was like, you know what, I need to shift my perspective on how I see boring. And it made me just grateful that I get to have another day where I have the same routine, and my day looks very similar to the one that was yesterday and the day, before yesterday, and continue to have these moments where I'm able to just have a somewhat of a predictable future, right? Where everything is at peace and I'm calm and I'm on this same frequency. But as she said, at any moment it can be altered. So I write down, like, I'm very grateful that today was another day where I was able to, spend time for myself, spend time with my family. Nothing crazy happened today, right? From car accidents to calls that could be about, somebody in your family passing away, like these tough, life events that happen that really make you question your reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you put things in perspective like that, then you bring yourself down to, like, okay, a sense of clarity on the day-to-day stuff of, like, being able to just come back home, cook, clean, do everything with the I get to attitude versus the, oh, here's another fucking day, type of attitude.
Yeah, I think living through gratitude and living through love is something that I think gets gets shown and shoved at us, but do people really practice it? I
It's in
don't. I
those
don't think.
moments,
I
I
don't.
think,
I don't
when
think
you
people do that because, yeah, like you said, it's in those moments where you absolutely need to ground yourself and, like, give yourself perspective, because I don't think we give ourselves enough. We get too caught up in what's going on instead of just taking a step back and taking a moment for yourself to just be like, okay, is this the worst thing? Maybe it's pretty terrible thing, but again, having that perspective of gratitude and realizing for the most part people's problems is really not as bad, guys, and, like, really focusing on what you do have instead of what you don't. And I think that's another thing, another conversation we had on, like, we're so focused on looking at what the person doesn't have versus, well, let's look at the qualities of what they do have and, like, appreciate that. Like, what if that was taken away? Right.
Because if you just shift your perspective to that, then that'll make you appreciate where you are now, and you know how you're sharing life together versus, coming at it from scarcity, like, okay, they're not doing XYZ, which, you shouldn't even be focused on that. You should always be focused on yourself first. And if you think that the other person isn't giving you something, then you need to have an audit with yourself, really, as to what you're lacking for yourself.
But let's tap into that, because I think I mean, you have lots of friends who are married with children, and I mean, I've known that. We've also been married before, and it's almost and we've really also tapped into how we used to think, which is like the focus on lack. And that's something that's so focused on. And, like, when people get in their cliques and they talk about how their marriage life is going, it's always on the mindset of, like, lack, of, like, oh, he didn't do this or she didn't do that, or it's always about that instead of the other way around.
Yeah, because the perspective, again, they're focused on lack, what's missing or what's, like, that next spark in the relationship versus appreciating what we're both giving each other right now, which we've kind of talked about, right? But it does take shift in perspective, and then coaching yourself through these thought patterns. Like, it took me a while to, one, be open to even telling her all my thoughts and how I think. I think that really helps, like, dissolve the idea, right? Like, if I have certain doubts on whatever we think may be missing, and hearing myself out, I have more clarity, because I'm like, okay, I need to shift my perspective on that. I shouldn't even be expecting anything from her. I should be appreciative of the fact that we live together, that we get to do this. So that, like I said earlier, it's going from that get to attitude to attitude is very important. Not just gratitude, because you can sit there and write it all day long, but when in those tough moments, right? that your attitude towards life is really going to determine like how you see life, and it's all happening for you by the way that you're responding to it and by the way you perceive things. So I think for us, it's just shifting that. I don't know when it happened for you, but I think
Shifting
we've
the
both
mindset.
kind of grown
I think at
together.
the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you were pretty self-aware when we met, and I've always had that self-awareness, but I think a much deeper connection. We're so disconnected from ourselves, from our heart.
We are.
And I've been through this whole spiritual journey, especially after going to Awaken, wearing the hat to Love the Butterfly.
I mean,
And
that event has changed our relationship for the better. We were already on that
Facts.
path, but I'd say it shaved off like maybe another 2 years worth of work, you know, and every single Awaken event that we go to is just gonna
like
continue
marriage
to help
counseling.
us. Yeah, because
couples
at the end of
therapy.
the day, that event really helped us connect with each other's soul.
We'll connect with ourselves,
Yeah, with
and
ourselves,
then
and
with
then be
each
able
other.
to connect with each other.
Yeah.
So those events really yeah, they're
Yeah, I would say we've had even deeper conversation. I think we always had deeper conversations, but I felt we've even had even more vulnerable and deeper conversations ever since then, because it was, I don't know what it was that just kind of snapped. It just happened naturally and organically, where we felt safe with each other to tell each other like our feelings, like what the other episode, couple episodes ago, where you're talking about like financially, and the acceptance of like, hey, like, is this really what I want? Is this really, the life that I chose? And like having those thoughts and then thinking it through, I'm like, wait, that sounds ridiculous now. Like, what are these expectations, right?
And where are they coming from? Like,
yeah.
what?
So I think it just allowed us to tap into ourselves, and therefore stand in our power, each of us individually, to then be able to come to the table and be like, hey, this is how I feel. Like I felt like that yesterday. I was just laying there and I was like, I've been thinking, because I've been running. I've started running in my
You've been
workouts.
thinking before you've been running.
Well,
You just think
I've been running away from my thoughts.
Been
running away from my thoughts.
Thinking, but you think.
No, I just mean like it's allowed me. I've stopped using
and I know
headphones.
most people have those thoughts though. Like most people have thoughts, but then you just hold them in. You don't say anything.
Well, that's what I used to do. Like I used to hold my thoughts and run away from them, right? That was my coping mechanism from like the longest time, was like not feeling my feelings, because back then feeling my feelings was like unsafe. It was scary, it was dark. And so I found refuge in running away from it. So speaking of running, like I've been running, but I've been running without headphones, because I found like I really want to listen to my body when I'm running, because it's really important to feel that it's all breath, right? And so I've been using this time to, as I'm running, is to think about stuff, just whatever comes to mind. It can be ideas like business stuff, or like just kind of replaying back situations, and then just thinking. And so I was just like, I was thinking on my run, like I've come to the terms that I've accepted, like, hey, this is a possibility that, we may not work out in 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, who knows, but that's okay. And that I love myself enough that, and I think what we were watching today as well, talking about release and receive with relationships, jobs, whatever, is like, when you break up with someone, it's a release. And when you get together with someone, or you get a job, or you get money, it's like you receive it, right? And so just viewing it that way, on like, hey, it's just something I had to release, doesn't mean that you still don't feel pain, but it's just that you just view it like that, and like that allows you to kind of heal from whatever it is.
But it's just an experience at the end of the day. So if you don't get attached to how the experience is supposed to end according to you, right? If you're open to just receiving, like right now, receiving the love, receiving the connection that we have right now, and not focus too much on where it's going to be 3 to 5 years from now. And yes, it's okay to play out worst case scenario, because if we face that worst case scenario and we feel it, we kind of almost come to terms with it, and you're okay, and you free that thought, and then that thought just goes, right? And then another thing, I was listening to a podcast from Ed Milet, and he was one of the guys that he was interviewing was talking about his divorce. And so I like how he explained it. He basically talked about how in his divorce, he wrote about it in the book, and he wrote how it's just telling himself like, hey, this was a bad quarter, you know. So it's almost looking at your lifespan, right? And looking at it that way, like this was a bad quarter, this was a bad first quarter, you know, second quarter, halftime, whatever, whichever way you want to, again, have the perspective on it. However you want to position that perspective makes a difference in the world. And he also talked about how he told himself that, and then he also told himself not to linger too much in that emotion and not think about it too much and not talk about it enough, because you know, when you're divorced, I carried that for a while. Oh, well, I just got divorced, and it was like 2 years. Like, girl, you've been divorced.
Well,
like,
for
let
me,
it go.
it was like instant. It was like
Right. No,
split
but
up.
but for me, I think with Alex, like, yeah, I just kept, you know, the I'm divorced, single parent or single mom hat. I wore that shit because I loved being a victim.
And that's yeah, I was gonna say it's a victim mentality. So many of us live in that victim, and I think we saw another Danny Morel episode where he talked about like, oh yeah, I danced with it, or I ate like I love that shit. Like people literally
we love that,
love the attention that comes with.
And I'm not gonna lie, it's soothing for that period of time. But what
maybe because
happens
you
is you
had a
stay in
void
it too long. Yeah. Well, sometimes because you have a void of not being connected with yourself, right? Like I didn't know back then that I can self-soothe and that I could be there for myself, and I don't need to go telling the world that I had gone through a divorce so that they could feel pity for me, so then I could feel comfort. You know, like it took me on this journey to find that out myself later in life, that I have the power to self-soothe, self-heal, and be that coach, you know, that life coach that I
well, another
want.
thing too is being the mother and father too. Like
That
is
too.
is
That's a big one
the
that I'm trying
nurturing.
to teach Alex right now, for example, right? Since he doesn't have his dad present, or at all, really. He sometimes I want him. I just want him to grasp that concept, and I know he's 10, and maybe it doesn't click, but I tell him from time to time, like, you know, even though you don't have your dad physically here, I'm sure he loves you. I'm sure you guys will have some form of relationship when you grow up, but you don't lack, you know, having a father. Like you are your own representation of fatherly love and motherly love as well. Like you can give yourself self-love, and whether it's feminine or masculine or mother or father, I think when you get to that point, then again, it's perspective. You really you go into this journey of self-healing.
Yeah, and I think that's really powerful and could be a little advanced for some people as well, that are not accustomed to dealing with that. They'll be like, what do you mean mother and father? Like, you know, it's like you can't just have the kid be, you know, whatever. There's so many people that will come at it. So I think for many it's a very new concept in a way. It's like being a mother to myself. But like if you really think about it, you are your own coach. And I think we also we're hearing a lot of times we're good at giving people advice, but we don't follow it either, right? So it's like you got to see yourself as like you know exactly what you have to do, what you have to say, but it's like following through on your word.
Yeah, and it's almost like you want validation from the exterior world, and it's like you are intuitive. That's why you have an intuition, you have a gut instinct, but we are so disconnected from each other that we don't know how to follow that instinct and that gut. And deep down, you know what you should be doing in your life, you know what you want, but you're so distracted by so many like shining objects in life right now through social media and comparing yourself, and you know, just wanting to take different paths and not focusing on like, you know what you want and you know what you should be doing. And so tapping into that power, that one where you don't need external reassurance from anyone, you can give yourself that. That's what I'm really trying to implement myself, and then also for Alex. And not to say I'm not motherly, like she knows I'm very affectionate with him, and she's more masculine energy with him. So he's getting a combination of both. But I think when you feed that into a child, the whole purpose is that they can take that with them when they grow up, and they understand that they don't need like I think for me, many years, I wanted to prove myself to my mom, you know, and like I wanted to be I wanted her to be proud of her daughter. And when I let go of that idea, or even the fact that I need her love, right? In certain standards or conditional love, then it gave me a lot of freedom to know that I could give myself that same love.
Yeah, because your love to yourself isn't conditional.
No, it's
Right.
never.
And
You
we
have to
talked
have your own back.
yeah,
Basically.
we talked a little bit about that yesterday or last or 2 weeks ago, whatever, in the last episode about there is such thing as conditional love, especially when it comes to partners. But that's, I feel like, with anybody. That can
Mhm.
be with family, whatever. At the end of the day, like the only one where there's no condition is it's you. So
Mhm.
how are you gonna take care of yourself first?
Yeah, because you have to face yourself. You have to live with yourself. You have to be with yourself. That's why we were talking about COVID has created a lot of depression, and like suicide rates are going high. And I think because during COVID, right, and during times where you have to face yourself and sit with your own energy, most people are busy and distracted and never sit with themselves. And when you really have to sit with yourself and your thoughts and how you feel about yourself and like face your own energy, that's tough. Most people can't handle
Right.
that stress or that
We
pressure.
weren't prepped for that.
But once you get past that and you push through and you do the inner work and you have self-love, self-accountability, you really tap into this beautiful space where you don't lack anything, you don't expect from anyone, and you just want to give love and be love and receive love, and that's it. Like it's
Yeah.
really that
And I
simple.
think it's seeing the adversity as like hey, it's just part of the journey. And we're also
Yes.
right talking about like the waves, or was it surfing through time frames or timelines, is like each experience that you deal with, it's an experience. And it's also kind of going back to like the word, how we see lack, where we kind of go back to our past and compare it to that. But it's like we're transitioning from experience to experience. So just appreciating whatever it is that you're going through, as tough as it is. We've both gone through some really tough situations in our lives, and we're able to make it. Like, you have to have that mindset and create that mindset that, hey, it's just part of whatever, like, that universe is trying to teach me, and all I can do is take and learn from this and just apply it to the next experience. So it's like just viewing it in that sense, it's like switching your mindset, and it's a lot easier said than done. So I think it's important to surround yourself, or even listening to, you don't even have to find friends like this. I think just opening up your mind with looking up to people that maybe are spiritual or motivational. Like, we can probably provide a list of what we would recommend if you feel like you're stuck, right? Which is,
Mm-hmm.
again, living in lack, is what we
Yeah, I
found.
think life is, in my eyes, right, and it's just my thought. It's not. It's just my truth, but it may not be yours. But for me, life is just a collective of experiences that I'm gonna take with me onto the next realm, and probably come back and like, call in some other journey. And then it's just ongoing. And so that's the thing with time, is that it's not this linear thing. It's like just a constant flow of experiences and what we take away from it, right? They could be lessons, they could be just an experience. Like, you don't have to read into it that crazy either.
Right.
I think we try to overcomplicate shit, and think that there's like all these meanings attached to everything. And yes, there's synchronicities and synergies and all these things, but it's just being able to live and live with yourself. Like, you are your biggest critic sometimes, and you have to be the one to really be there for you. Like, if you were, your own mother, how would you soothe yourself? If you were your own father figure, how would you be firm in your decisions, right? If you, even as a kid too, like having that creativity, like doing podcasts and creating content and doing all that stuff, that requires, like, the kid in you that's creative and uses imagination. And it's just being able to tap into these different hats and not be attached to any of them is really nice.
Yeah. I like how we've kind of spun from like boredom to
Yeah, to
but I think
creativity.
I think it's true with relationships as well, as we overcomplicate it when it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like, I think back on my last relationship of marriage, where I think we tie ourselves in our head, and if we don't have the tools, it's so easy to get caught up in like manipulation and like lies and all those other things that come out. um it's and viewing it, not viewing things as failures either, like the mistakes
Yeah,
as
it's just
well.
an experience.
And
You're
and I'm not
married.
saying if you are married, like tell your husband or wife fuck off, or but I think it's having that self-awareness of like how you're feeling, because we're so many people out there are so disconnected. They're so caught up in the day-to-day, especially if you have kids. It's like, all right, wake up, get the kids ready, work.
You're like on
And
robot mode.
yeah, and so you don't take the time to really connect with yourself. That's why, like, not even meditating for super long, but like just taking like 5 minutes of like breath work and just feeling what you're feeling. Like, what is your body telling you?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, having those conversations somehow. And if you're having a hard time in like your partner opening up, maybe that's a sign too. I'm like, hey, if I can't even like,
If
go
you
up to
can't
this
speak your
person.
truth, that's one thing I've vowed to myself. Like if I can't ever speak my truth to you, that's a red flag. We're gonna have to work through that, because I want to be in a relationship where I can really speak my mind, and not lose myself. Like I'll never lose myself again, like I did in my marriage and
Mhm.
other relationships. Like I'm sure you've had friendships where
Right.
they,
Or
give you
jobs.
the guilt trip, especially with jobs too. You feel tied up and you feel like you owe somebody something. You don't owe anybody anything. Like follow your heart and stay true to yourself, and don't stay quiet. Like speak your truth basically, and be comfortable with those around you so that you can speak your truth. If you don't feel comfortable, that's a sign. That's a clear sign.
To search within on like
And I
why
think
you're
that's
feeling
helped
that.
us. That's helped us maintain our boringness, right? If you want to call it that. But I'm very grateful, like for our boringness, our routines that we've set in place to keep ourselves,
But we do check-ins,
we do check
like
in.
sporadic. It's not like planned. We do have our monthly check-ins where we go over like the four areas, the main areas. But in terms of just how we're feeling, it may just be like where I'm feeling, like I need to speak my truth, or like even like yesterday is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't planned. There was just a break in time. You weren't. I don't know if you were working. Maybe.
And you're having those thoughts, to be honest, because of where you're at right now mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a reflection of you. It has nothing to do with me.
No, but I know I can come to you.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
Where
and
we
and
can come
then
to each
talking
other.
about it, like that idea dissolved, right? Because I think a lot of people think about that, and they just
It wasn't
won't
even the
speak
idea.
it.
It was just to share, like, hey, we had that talk 2 weeks ago, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I accepted it then, but like I really thought it
Accepted it
through
yesterday.
and really
Yeah.
accepted it too. So it was just kind of like we already talked about this, but yeah, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, like I really thought about it this time. No, that's good, because you should. Like I think the more you can feel the feeling, the more it's less scary.
Right.
When it does, or if it does happen.
And just not clarifying, but like declaring like our commitment to each other as
Mhm.
well, especially
Mhm.
during a time like this where it is a transition period, specifically for me, navigating on, getting my next job and obviously building my business, but just having that commitment for each other, and also being grateful, like going back to gratitude about what we have. We have everything we ever need.
Yeah.
And living in that life of abundance, like there's no lack here. Some other people would think like, well, you're not, living here, you're like, people are so focused on that, but it's like, I don't care. I still want the same attitude whether I'm making 100K a month or 5K a month. Like it doesn't
Yeah, and
matter.
I think every day we take it to basics and we check in, we talk about what we're grateful for every single day. Because if you just do that for a couple minutes a day throughout the day, right, everything requires maintenance. Your mindset too, your thoughts. So you kind of have to disrupt all your negative thoughts with gratitude, and then ground yourself and bring yourself back to that gratitude state. And that helps both of us, so that we choose to show up as the best versions of ourselves to the relationship to make our lives better, because we're living together. So it's like, let's try to do the best that we can, whatever work we got to do, so that we can show up to the game solid.
Oh, okay, coach.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can stop it there. That
Yeah.
was really good. It's going to be a little crazy the next couple weeks. So like
I'll say, like this morning I had kind of like a relationship with this boringness, right? I wanted to go out and have like a family thing, but it didn't work out because there's just the weather here and like trying to map something out outside is just crazy. But I quickly checked myself and I was like, well, we're having the SF trip, we're having the Costa Rica trip, we're having the LA trip
You're going
again,
to
or
LA.
Vegas with your brother. So it's like shifting your focus. Like, yeah, you don't get to like go out today on a Saturday, right? We're recording this podcast instead, and we're gonna hang out at home. But I quickly brought myself to like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that we have a house, you know, that we have our little home that we've created
And
good
there's
energy
nothing
with.
planned.
And there's nothing planned, and we're just enjoying the day. And I'm looking forward to the vacations that we're gonna have. So yes, sometimes you do have to not sacrifice, but like shift perspectives so that you're grateful in your day to day. And then I quickly just got up and I went to go work out. And I was very grateful because there was no traffic when typically during the week there's a shit ton of traffic. So shifted my focus, shifted my energy, came back, and we're good.
Yeah, and for me, it's like during like Monday through Friday, usually even Saturdays, I get up early. But I was like, my body was telling me you need sleep, you need a rest, and it felt so good. I mean, I still woke up early, like 6:30, but that's still a win's a win.
Mm-hmm.
That was still a win. Like I've been getting up at 4 these last 2 weeks, and then I've been getting up at around 4:30 the past month to create time, or be more efficient, but like also, I'm really in building mode. But um I listened to my body. I was like, you know what? I want to have a slow morning today. And I did. I took my time. I did my journal. I listened in, and then I went to go work out. And it's been so pleasant. So whatever it is, listen to your body, because it's your body is going to tell you what it is that you need. So you have all the answers.
Yes.
I think we'll
leave it
at that.
Maybe we'll talk about health on the next one, since that's a big part of our journey right now, because it really falls into how you feel.
Yeah, especially
what you put in your body. It just makes sense, right?
Well, especially for me, who's been getting up at 4, and I don't feel super cranky. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm tired, but I'm not like I'm able. I think it's because of the health and us taking care of ourselves, eating right. That's kind of allowed me to work these crazy.
I think
hours.
On the physically, it's just by default. It's a byproduct of you taking care of yourself, right? The physical shows that, but mentally, man, like eating healthier thoughts. Put it that way. You eat junk food, you have fucking junk thoughts. Damn,
dang, that's a bar right there.
What did I say?
Junk food is junk thoughts.
Hey,
healthy food is healthy thoughts.
Ooh,
my boo's got it. All right, we're gonna drop it right there. Thank you guys for tuning in. I don't know if we'll do it next week. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But yeah, maybe we'll do it before we head out to SF. But thanks for tuning in. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and follow us on the medias, and we'll catch you then. Peace. Bye. Oh, yeah, again, cut